Obviously 5 practices in here. We've got a completely different group at the outside linebacker room, a lot of new faces, so we're working through a lot of things, obviously teaching a lot of guys our defensive structure and individual skills, techniques, just trying to work through that process. And as we go through that process, try to evaluate, kind of where some guys are at and what skill sets they bring to the table. But no, it's been a great group to coach. I mean, obviously we've got some transfers and some early enrollee freshmen, so as I just mentioned, there's a lot of new faces and there's a lot of growth, but they've all really bought into what Coach Fickell's vision is and really bought into Wisconsin football. And I'm pleased with five practices, how we're doing, and from a special teams perspective, similar faces back there. Also, we added Case and Pfeiffer from University of Cincinnati. It's been long snapping, but between myself and Coach Fickell and our new special teams analyst, we're working through that process too. Primarily just kind of taking a look at some of the specialists, but also just trying to look at some of our players because we have a lot of new players just in terms of their skill sets too. So just a lot of skill set evaluation and trying to make sure guys are buying into the culture of what we're doing on.
Matt, what does a healthy Aaron Witt give you? I know you haven't been here for his whole journey.
Right. No,
what do you think it means to have someone like that?
I mean, there's some intangibles that Aaron Witt brings to the team beyond just his physical production. Talking about a guy that hadn't really taken any reps for over 2 years. I mean, I think we look back and it had been over 700 days since he'd been on the practice field. So even a little bit of an emotional lift for our team. I know he was a little bit in Minnesota, but especially during the bowl prep for LSU. That was the biggest thing, and he just brings a really intensity to him and the way he approaches things and a high standard. So there's an intangible piece. I think it's been really good for him. January, February, March. He's been, we've been limiting his pitch count a little bit through the first practices, but he's finally full go the 5th. Really violent at the point of attack in the run game. Extremely violent at the point of attack in the run game. Really intelligent football player. Just in regards to him understanding, backfield sets, formations, splits. Like he has a key on things even before the ball snap. And I think the pass rush, it will get there. That's probably the thing that's lagging right now. It's a little bit just some of those things because that's about get off and your feel for things. But there's been an immediate impact already, just in terms of the run game. Like he's brought a lot of physicality in the run game. But again, I think secondary to some of the production on the field is more about what he brings to the room and more about what he brings to the locker room.
Matt, you've coached a long time. I'm sure you've encountered kids who have had to deal with injuries and
Yeah.
haven't had. Have you ever dealt with anyone who had this much missed time to try to get back, who sticks with it that long?
Not really. I mean, there's been it's been a long journey for him, and I haven't really had anybody that's missed that much time. And so I think we've been, just based on timing, been very cautious, both the athletic training staff and Coach Fickell and the coaching staff, of just trying to make sure that we just don't rush back too quick. I mean, even when he got cleared from Minnesota, we try to keep things very simple, small, not simple, but we try to keep things down just in terms of load. I said, you come that far, if you had another one, that could really have a negative effect just from a mental health standpoint. But tremendous, just an unbelievable amount of grit, just handling that much adversity in regards to those injuries and things that come back for them. And it's something that you can point to as a coach within your position group, and I know within the team, of how to handle adversity and how to handle that, because very passionate about the game of football got taken away. And so it's another, just a little life lesson of an attitude of gratitude for the opportunity that you have, and don't take anything for granted, because you can point to a guy right there that probably should have been on the field in 22 and 23, but missed those opportunities.
A few of your fellow coaches have talked about more length and athleticism on the roster.
Yep.
Is that an area you feel that your room has improved in, especially with some of the transfers you brought in?
Definitely, with the transfers, that was something we were looking for in that process. I think that in order to be a really successful outside linebacker, you got to be good. We kind of talk about a 5-tool player similar to baseball. You got to be able to set violent edges in the run game, disruptive in the run game on the edge. You got to be able to affect the quarterback, not necessarily to sack the quarterback, but affect the quarterback. You got to be able to drop in zone coverages. You got to be able to drop and cover tight ends and tailbacks man, and then also you got to be able to run some inside pressures and dig some things out and do some dirty work in some gaps inside. I think all of those things, length is important. Length is important to create that separation in the run game. The separation gives you the vision to be able to see where the ball carries and get off blocks. Obviously, length is important in regards to the pass rush for the same thing. And that length can make things difficult when you're covering guys, just that length and the quarterback's vision and length there. So, we do value length. I just want to make sure to clarify that, there also comes a tipping point where you become too tall, you become ineffective in terms of your athleticism. So there's kind of a sweet spot. And it doesn't mean moving forward that we wouldn't take somebody that's maybe shorter than 6'3", but you better be pretty twitchy, snappy, and violent in order to do that. But for right now, we do feel like we fit with the 2 transfers. And with, the high school guys, we're talking guys 6'3", 6'4", that do have that length, I think is really, really valuable.
Matt, how has Leon kind of shown that 5-tool ability, and
Yeah.
just where have you seen some of his impact?
Leon's off to a very fast start. It's exciting to be transparent, just coming in here and being able to do. I think you see with him, he played 3 different positions at his previous institution at an FBS level, and so coming in here, I think the learning curve and the gap wasn't quite as big, just because and now we've got him playing one position. He's really locked in his skill set at that one position. He's really honed in on what he needs to do at that position. So consequently, I think he's been able to pick it up very quick. So he's been great, in certain ways. I know some things were very public in regards to his recruitment. He's pretty much the exact opposite as maybe what a perception would be. He's been great. He's been very humble, very bought into what we're doing. And I think that the addition of him and John has created some competition, which I know will make Aaron Witt and Darren Peterson better. And so it's we have friendly competition in the outside linebacker room. To be transparent, in 23, we just didn't quite have the depth at that position, and so put a lot of pressure on guys to play a lot, like CJ gets. I will have as much respect for him as anybody in coaching as I move forward, what he meant for Wisconsin football, but he was probably out there taking too many reps at times. And was ineffective with some third downs, and ineffective, I think, later on in the season, and as it could have been. So I think going back to your point with a Leon Lowry, a guy coming in and infusing that body type and some of the experience, I think is going to help everybody else too.
You mentioned
John?
You mentioned the kind of the public nature of
Yeah.
Leon's.
Yeah.
I imagine that process caught you off guard. What was your takeaway?
Yeah, I don't know if that caught me off guard. I mean, no disrespect, but it's like I've been coaching college football for a long time. I've seen a lot of different situations in recruiting. I've had a lot of things that have occurred in recruiting, and so I just think that sometimes things are public and sometimes things are private that you don't see, and that happened to be a little bit more public in regards to some of the things that happened. So, I mean, it was one that we worked through together. That's what I tell you is like we worked through a lot of things together, and I think that he always had a vision of himself being at Wisconsin. Just based on his visit and the people. And so at the end of the day, it came back to people. It came back to people. And it got out there and it was public, probably more, but there's been some of those situations with other prospects I've had that have been private, that have been that way. That's recruiting. That's the nature of recruiting.
Coach John, he's a guy who's making the jump to Division I.
Yeah.
You talked about, a little bit of the difference. You've kind of made that jump as well. What are some of the differences you've kind of seen from D2 to D1, and what have you maybe had a conversation with him about that?
That's a great question. So I would say, and specifically for John, and then I'll kind of, piggyback and dovetail to my experiences. There's just when you deal with the lower levels, it's the nature of the reality. Just not quite as many resources sometimes. John's a very talented football player, and when he came in here, I think he weighed in one of the first days like 222, and he's up to 248. I think that's a result of Coach Collins, our strength and conditioning program, the individual attention. Definitely nutrition is a factor in that, whether it's a nutritionist in regards to the education, but also resources just in regards to food. That sometimes you've been at the lower level where you don't, and so I think John has benefited from that. You've got this nature of our staff. Like I have a lot of one-on-one attention with all the outside linebackers, and so this allows for maybe a quicker development just because of that too. And so the parallels, I mean, Division II head coach, we were making peanut butter and jellies for our guys. Like we're out there doing it and those things, and that's not a knock on anything. It's the nature of things, like the resources and not having some of those resources. I think John is benefiting from taking advantage of opportunities and the resources Wisconsin athletics and Wisconsin football have.
When you look back at last season from a special teams perspective and kind of reflected on it, where do you think this team can take a step forward? Because it seems like things were pretty stable. Maybe just didn't get the big plays you were hoping for.
No, I would agree with that. I mean, I don't think that at any point in time, reflecting back that the special teams, affected this ball team, put them in a position where we didn't win games. But did to your point, did we really swing field position as much as we needed to, do the things we needed to? Just a couple things like our kickoff, the kickoffs in general, and the kickoff coverage. At times there's really 3 factors when you kick a ball, whether it's a punt or a kickoff. It's aim time, distance, and location. And if you're good at 2 of those factors, you're probably going to have pretty good coverage units. And when you take a look at the kickoff team, not any one individual, but in general, just didn't quite have the hang time, distance, and location to create some advantage for our guys. And at times the punts were inconsistent. I mean, I think that reared its head a little bit in the bowl game against LSU. We had an opportunity to flip some fields and do some things that we didn't, and we put our defense in some tougher positions. The return games, there were some effective kickoff returns, and I'll point to Vinny Anthony and Tretch towards the stretch down the season were good on the kickoff returns. And that was not just them, but a collection of people. And so I'm optimistic about both those guys back there, and I think you're seeing the impact Tretch is having right now as second year as a receiver. He's doing a really good job. So, and we'll continue to identify the pump block. We want to try to stay aggressive in that. We didn't block a punt, but we did affect the punter sometimes. So, I would say it's a little bit more some of the kick units, creating that field position for our defense is something we got to try to focus on.
When it comes to going back to John and just his transition from the FCS and William Mary to here, what do you like about him? I know we've talked about length and athleticism before, but just what do you like about him, and where do you want him taking steps forward?
Sure.
Spring into the fall.
Yeah, specifically in his game, like very twitchy, very snappy. He comes inside on run game or in the pass rush. When he comes inside, he gets vertical in a hurry and creates a lot of disruption at the point of attack. I'd say definitely pass rush. He's got arguably the best get off of any outside linebacker right now, just in terms of his get off. We always try to tie him on his first two steps, trying to gain 5 yards, which is unrealistic, but he's gaining a solid 3 and some change on his first two steps off the ball. So an ability to affect that and then come underneath those things. I think probably the biggest thing for John is his previous institution. He was never asked to drop into coverage. He was never asked to do anything. Like, it was basically, just line up on the ball and go vertical, and that was it. And so he's good at those things now, and he's learning some of the nuances and a little bit of some things that have to kind of occur, because we do lock those outside backers in coverage and do some drops. Now, the better they are rushing, probably the less we're going to drop them. But at the same time, like, those are skill sets that he's learning, and he's doing a good job kind of embracing them, but those things are new to him. I would also say that there's a lot more complexity and diversity to our defensive schemes and our calls probably than he's used to, and so he's picking things up and trying to get out and do a lot of those things. So it's probably with John less about physical ability, it's more about just experience and within our schemes and just seeing some different things and being used to some different calls.
Matt, you mentioned improved depth this year in
Yeah.
your room, and I know it's ridiculously early to ask this,
Yeah.
but how many guys do you think you will be able to rotate through next year?
Yeah, that's a good call. I mean, ideally, we'd like to try to have 4. We like to try to have 4, 2 at each of the spots, and I don't really want 1s and 2s. I want to try to see if we get 1A, 1B. And I get everybody gets obsessed with starting. I get that. I think it's an obsession that drives me crazy at times. I understand it. They're competitive kids that want to start, but when you talk 1A, 1B, what does that look like? I don't know. Is that 50-50 in terms of snap counts? Is that 60-40? If we can get more to that 50-50, 60-40 and try to stay away from the 80-20, 90-10, I think it's going to be better for Wisconsin football. We're out there with those guys playing 60 snaps, and the guys got playing special teams, play 12 regular season games with the opportunity to play postseason. I think it's a very difficult position to play if you're asking them to rush the passer and be super aggressive to play 60 snaps over the course of the 12 games. I think that's very difficult. And so we have to have depth of position. I just hope we continue to have that friendly competition in the room, but also an understanding from a big picture that the best thing for those guys is to win football games. That's the best thing for experience. And if we can do that collectively together, then that's going to be better. And so I'm seeing that right now. And I just hope that as we get closer to the season, you want really highly competitive kids that want to be out there, but also have step back and have a big picture mentality too.
In general, you mentioned that getting individual players to see that the collective good of the team is the ultimate goal.
Correct.
As you've coached, has that gotten easier or more difficult to do?
I mean, I don't think it's become more difficult to be transparent. You may think
Okay.
it's just a BS answer to the media, but I think it still comes back to the type of people you recruit.
Okay.
I think it's about people. I mean, has the game changed? The Big Ten expanding? Is there name, image, likeness? Has a lot of things changed? Things have changed, but people are still people. People are still people, and you find the right type of people, there. And I always say the best part of your experience as a student athlete will be about winning. There's just really no replication for the joy of winning in a winning locker room. Mm-hmm. And sometimes if you can step back, a big picture view that it takes, a collective group of people to do that. That's important. And so, we have to recruit those type of guys off the jump that come in here that aren't so selfish and so self-oriented that they don't understand that.
Coach, Jaheim Thomas and a couple of
Yep.
those inside backers, you've seen them potentially
Sure.
work on the outside.
Yeah,
Do
yeah.
you think that maybe helps you with the depth and maybe, trying to figure out your rotation?
There's no doubt. So we are going through a process right now. We're 5 practices in with a lot of new faces. We're just trying to find who are the best groupings of people that can affect the quarterback. And I think there's 3 rooms you're drawn from on that. There's a defensive line with Coach Whitlow. There's obviously my room with the outside linebackers and Coach Russ with the inside. Jaheim has had some previous experiences with this staff at Cincinnati as being on an edge as an edge rusher, so we're giving him some opportunities. Sebastian Cheeks did a little of that at his previous institution, so we're looking for the right blend of we're running a lot of different packages out there right now to try to give guys opportunities to see who affect the quarterback. That includes at times, you guys have been in practice, we're taking like a Daryl Peterson or Aaron Witt and bumping him down inside to like a 3 technique or a 2-eye. DP really enjoys that. Witt is very unselfish, should do anything for Badger football. So when you start to do those things and look at some different pieces, obviously James Thompson has been a factor in terms of the pass. I couldn't even tell you on the first third down, you know, we go out against Western Michigan or South Dakota, Alabama, who's out there first. We're going through that right now.
Thomas Heiberger's a guy that looks the part. You talk about the length, the physicality. We've heard good things about his workouts and everything. How's he doing in terms of like the classroom and the learning of defense because of the complexity there?
Well, the academic classroom, he's absolutely destroying it. He's got like a 4.0. So he's come in here and just absolutely killing it from an academic standpoint. But no, he's learned our defense very fast. Very fast. I'm really impressed with him. I don't know. I'm not going to make any predictions. But again, like, is there a potential for him potentially contributing on special teams and maybe being the 5th guy? There's a potential. We got a lot of work to do. He's super intelligent. You know, in regards to the games, like he's very comfortable, and this makes sense based on his high school career. Like anytime we're in coverage drop and those things, he's great. He's a pretty good pass rusher. I think the thing he's getting used to is that on the line of scrimmage at the point of attack against Big Ten tight ends and offensive linemen. And that's the area of his game that he's got to continue to try to work on is some of that stuff going against some guys because he was the biggest fish in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and you're not in Sioux Falls, South Dakota anymore. And so it's just, you know, we got different guys coming in, there's some different people, and so he's shown glimpses he can do it. It's just a consistency of being able to do it. But I'm really excited, you know, for a kid that should be in high school right now, kind of what he's done. I think it's been it's fun to be a part of that. So kudos to him.
Talking about frame, John and Leon, they both kind of bulked up to that 240,
Yeah.
250 range.
Yeah.
I know you talked about, you know, height, maybe 6'3", 6'4". Is
Yeah.
that the frame you kind of want for your outside linebacker?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to put pigeonhole body types and things like that, but in general, the shorter you are, the snappier you got to be. But when we start to look, okay, you look at a guy at 6 foot, 6'4", 6'5", somewhere in that framework. You know, I just think in general, when you look at athletes, in order to line up across the tight end in the Big Ten, and you have to dominate tight ends in the Big Ten across them, you have to win that matchup. We have to win that matchup. It becomes difficult to do that if you start dipping below the 245. It just becomes more difficult. At the same time, you get a 270-pound guy. I don't know he can be athletic and do some of the things we need him to do in terms of that snap and athleticism. So again, yeah, that 245, 255, 260. Again, I don't want to. You know what I mean? There may come a point in time, if I'm an outside linebacker coach, fortunate to be here for 10 years, that we may have a 6'2" guy that's 230 pounds, but I guarantee he's violent-ass hands, and he's really, really twitchy. So I don't want to over-stereotype, but the guys we have now, yeah, them getting to that 6'4" range being, I think Leon is up 255, 260, somewhere in that area, you know, and I think John is pushing up. Hopefully we can get John to the 250-ish, and that's a long way to come from 220. I think that's going to make them effective players.
With Daryl, just
Yep.
you have the influx of transfers and
Yep.
talent. Have you seen him raise his game?
He has, like,
in the competition?
he had a really good practice on yesterday. Sorry, I lose track of time when you're coaching. But our 5th practice, I thought he practiced extremely well. I'm putting a lot of pressure on Daryl right now. Like, so our 2 outside backer positions, the one in the field is the Sam, and the one in the boundary is the Jack. DP last year exclusively played the Sam just because of what was going on with CJ and those guys in the boundary. I'm having him play both positions, which mentally puts a lot of challenge. I felt like that was the next progression. What we had to do was put a lot of pressure and stress on him. It also offers us the flexibility to see what would be our possible best, rotations. With the new guys, I think in terms of learning, it's better to keep them in one spot and get them honed in on those skills. So I haven't really messed with, John, Leon, or even Witt coming off injury. I haven't really cross-trained him. Aaron can. I've cross-trained DP. And so that, early on, like, there may have been some highs and lows in regards to how we practiced, but I think that was more as a result of the pressure that was being put on him to understand the ins and outs of 2 different positions, which was difficult. But no, he had a really good practice. When he is consistently good, it's good for Wisconsin defense. And that's the thing I said to all of our position group. Don't reach for plays. Don't try to be occasionally great. Be consistently good. Operate at 1/11 of our defense, and then let plays come to you. The football gods will take care of you. And so for DP, it's like, I don't want any of my players to press and push too much because they think they got to go make a fantastic play to either earn the right to play or get to the NFL. Just do your job and be consistent. I know it's just, that's a cliche, but it's true. And that's what we all have to embrace.
Guys, we got time for one more if we want. Otherwise, the guys are ready.
I would say just with Anello, just how you talking about Thomas, how has he started to
he's done good. I think he's always known as a pass rusher. He's got a lot of edge. A lot of those guys from the islands have edge, so he's got a lot of edge. He's obviously tight with Moyne, Tretch, and some of those guys. And then again, I think the biggest thing for him is just the refinement of the skills, And not everything has to go 6 million miles an hour just on a complete path of disruption. There's some nuance and some subtlety in terms of how you do things. So I would rather, like, he's very aggressive. I would rather have to kind of put we're saying right now a little bit, put the leash on the tiger and get to that point. But it's good. I'm